Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Bruce McCurdy. Welcome, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing tonight?
Well, for the first time in a very, 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 very long time, I'm excited about something hockey related, Bruce. I can say like for the first week after the hockey shut down, I was still, I think I was on Oilers Now, and I said there's a 90% chance there's going to be playoffs this year. And everyone else was saying, I think Spector said 75% chance, and Bob was 50-50. I think Elliot Friedman was 50-50. Brian Burke was way down low. He wasn't.
Zero.
Yeah. So I was really bullish at the time, and I was diving into stories about, the playoffs and the power play. And, honestly, Bruce, since then, my enthusiasm had waned somewhat. But tonight, Bruce, there is a very, very interesting story from Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. Why don't you tell us what Friedman is reporting? Are you ready to do that, or do you want me to? You
absolutely. On their Sportsnet, the esteemed Elliot Friedman has written an article, Could North Dakota be an NHL location if 2019-20 season resumes? And he says several sites would be necessary, but Ralph Engelstad Arena in Grand Forks makes sense. Host of 2005 World Juniors, 2016 World Under-18s, and the NC2A's Fighting Hawks. It's an impressive facility, apparently $150 million facility. And what they're looking at is trying to set things up in non-league buildings. He says in here that Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix reported on Friday that the NBA was considering putting all of its playoff games in Las Vegas, where, of course, there's no NBA franchise. So whether this would be an idea to put all playoff games in the one spot, I don't know, or whether it would be one of multiple places. I mean, Saskatchewan's still a nice alternative.
Who raised that, Bruce? Who raised that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, North Dakota is kind of the Saskatchewan of the States, isn't it?
As soon as they went out, I was saying, you could have a tournament. Here's what I didn't know at the time, Bruce. Well, we didn't know how many players might have the disease. I think now we're getting a sense of that. And if they're all really isolating, especially if they're isolating with the knowledge, like really isolate guys, because there's a chance if you stay healthy, there's a chance we'll have playoffs. So don't go out doing whatever you do. Make sure you isolate. But I also didn't know is, if they're how much economic sense does it make just to have a TV event without any fans in the building, just have those games for TV? And Bruce, I think it would be huge money. Like, I know they have a contract probably they obviously have a contract for Sportsnet. I don't know, but I think Sportsnet would be thinking, or the rights holders would be thinking, we can sell ads for this. People are dying for something to, it's probably a bad word at this time, but they are extremely excited about anything that would be distracting and be able to watch. Now, of course, the quarantine or the isolation we're all under may not last that long, but I think that it would be still huge, that people would love this. And as a TV event, could make a lot of money off it, is my guess. But I've always been guessing about that, and I don't know the answer to that. But I'm not, so I put forward the idea that, play all your games, go to some small town in Saskatchewan or some small city in Saskatchewan, play all your games there. And Friedman, a few weeks later, was talking about the Saskatchewan solution on Oilers Now. He was talking about it kind of tongue in cheek as well. But this seems to maybe have some legs, Bruce. And what I would see would be like, you'd have to pick a hotel or two, and you'd quarantine the players there. I mean, and you quarantine the staff there. No one would leave. No one would be coming and going. It would be like a seniors home in Edmonton. Right now, my parents are at the Churchill downtown, and they're quarantined there. Like, you can't get in there. No one's in, no one's out. And that's what the players would be like, I'm assuming, at the hotel. And so I'm guessing you'd probably have, maybe the Eastern Conference might be in North Dakota, and maybe the Western Conference teams would all be in Saskatchewan or maybe Montana or something like that, and away we go.
Yeah, it'd be like a cruise ship, eh? Or maybe Shawshank. To get everybody just all together in one
Not a
spot.
not a cruise ship. No, that's the first.
I'm being intentionally ironic, of course, when I say that,
Yeah,
but
that I wonder if there's a
it's
hockey. I wonder if there's an arena on a cruise ship you could just set out to sea in.
yeah, it would just take one. Eh? I mean, this is the scary part, but they have North Dakota is one of those states that's not in lockdown mode because they haven't had yet a outbreak.
Oh,
But whether
really?
that makes it more likely to have a be susceptible because they are not taking precautions, who the heck knows? But I mean, just the fact they're talking about doing it anywhere means they're trying to keep their options open. Friedman says league and players must agree on any return to play scenarios. No doubt. The players are very concerned about the potential of 35% escrow on future paychecks, whether or not the NHL will consider allowing that to be paid over multiple years. So he says CBA discussions are believed to be taking place, but you'd have to think. I was thinking about this the other day and thinking, how can they even nail down in the CBA for 8 or 10 years in the future when nobody even knows how this is going to end? So
Well,
probably
you just
there's
base it on
just
percentage of
scenarios,
whatever the
percentages.
money is.
Hmm.
It's 50-50, right?
Yeah.
You, whatever the money turns out to be, it's 50-50. It's as simple as that. I'm not sure about the need for a long-term CBA out of this. Like, why? Like, why does that change because of this? Like, listen, this is happening, Bruce, because of the CBA, though. If the players were
Right.
just getting paid normally and they wouldn't get paid for the playoffs and they weren't worried about league-wide revenues, I think there's a slight, like, I know the players want to play anyway, but
Oh,
but the fact that their future earnings completely depends on how much money you make in this year's playoffs. If you're throwing away, what is it, $1 billion? I think more than $1 billion
big bucks.
if you don't.
It's
Or
big bucks for
so
sure. I
if you
mean,
could,
they're
let's say you can recoup 300 million or 400 million from TV, like just from putting this on TV, and I'm not sure what it would be, but I'm just guessing. Um, that's a big uh, chunk of money that the players will be missing out on next year. Half of that, if because the salary cap will be that much lower.
well, 400 million. That's like what Sportsnet pays for an entire year for their rights because they pay 5.2 billion over 12 years, so 430 million a year. Um, Not sure if that's Canadian or American, probably Canadian, but of course uh, it, it's a bigger, it's not the standard 1/10 in Canada what it would be in the States. They're pretty even, I think, but of course the demand for hockey is much more in this country than in the States. But there'd be big bucks out of the TV contract, but huge losses of gate receipts for both residual regular season games plus playoffs. And who knows what kind of format? Are you talking about 4 rounds of best of seven? Or are you talking about some kind of big tournament where 20 or 24 or 31 teams all get in and vie for position again, like the regular season never happened? Or how the hell are they going to do that? Like, there's so many issues to resolve.
I think the simplest thing is you send 8 teams. You might even pick 4 different sites.
Hmm.
You just and their quarantine sites.
Hmm.
You have the Western, the Pacific, the set. Whatever. What are the divisions? I can't even remember them. The Eastern Division, the Wet Pacific Division. Just looking for where else they might want to go. Manitoba has Manitoba's got a really low level of
Hmm.
COVID cases. So Manitoba, Saskatchewan, you could probably pick cities in there with enough hotels. I mean, because the problem of going to the reason you can't have every team going to Grand Forks is there's not enough hotels. I imagine in a small town city like that. To maybe there would be with everything else dead. Maybe there would be enough hotel room, but they probably want to have it as few cities as possible to keep it as simple
Right.
as possible. But you need the infrastructure in that
Keep the,
city
keep
to
the
be able to
travel.
host it.
Keep the travel to a minimum. I mean, Grand Forks. I mean, North Dakota. That's of course, a famous university program. So presumably, there's also accommodations on campus, residents. But I mean, that probably. I guess nothing would be up to their usual expectations, but what in the hell is going to be anymore? I mean, I don't know
If
what
they're looking
expectation.
for that, then to
Yeah.
hell with their
Oh
usual
well, yeah,
expectations. Like
yeah, I don't think so. I think you take what you can get. But,
the Ralph
oh, it's
Engelstad Arena has two rinks in it. Um, there's probably other rinks in what's the town? Is that
Grand Forks.
Grand Forks?
Hmm.
That is hockey country. So yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, that's where Elliot is going. It's a relatively short post, and he ends. There's nothing but time to work on these issues at the moment because it's not like anything else is going on. So I guess there's nothing but time to write about these issues as well from his point of view. So any little seed of news. It is a very low population density state. Only Montana, Wyoming, and Alaska have fewer people per square mile, the archaic measurement they use in south of the 49th. And uh, so it has that, I guess, going in its favor. Now, if you're going to televise hockey games from small arenas, your TV angles and your camera angles and so on are going to be very different to what people are used to as well.
So this is a
And
big arena, the Ralph
yeah,
Engelstad Arena.
yeah, I think that's big enough that you can
It
probably
would
get
11,643
yeah,
is the
and
capacity for hockey. So I mean, it's a you know it's a big modern
yeah.
arena. So that would be fine. Now they might have to have some games though in smaller arenas, depending on how many different places they go to, of course. But
Right.
yeah, I
Just depends how desperate are they to get the games in and what uh, how they project the audiences and so on. I mean, it's hard to imagine one of these leagues trying to do this and the other one not doing it, and therefore sort of cornering the market on TV. But NBA's talking about it, NHL's talking about it.
well
Uh,
they did the Premier League's talking about it too.
mhm.
So lots of people looking at this kind of thing of it's hard to imagine that you could have a crowd of people by June even here in Canada. I don't imagine that. So this I think was always the most likely scenario where they would be desperate enough just to play and they would go to something like this. I'm just looking at Brandon, Manitoba to see how many
20,
cases they have there.
20 players on a hockey team is a crowd by some of these definitions that say 10 or more people.
Well, they're probably looking at states where they haven't put in kind of that state of emergency yet and have those huge restrictions. You you you'd have to work out a deal, obviously, to have 100 people at the event. Like I'm sure to stage an NHL game, you need at least 100 people there. I'm guessing. What do
Well,
you think? You
you
know
need
that
to, yeah, oh
that would
yeah,
be the minimum,
you
right?
need to test the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
And whether they have the capacity. I mean, you keep hearing that the ability to do these tests is ramping up, and they have quicker turnarounds on them, and so on. But there's also the matter of how well do we understand the test? What does a negative result mean, and how long does it mean it's going to stay negative? How many results do you need to get kind of cleared? There's going to be some pretty steep obstacles for sure.
Just is just one team so far with players that have tested positive? Is it just the Senators or is it also the Avs? Has there been an Avs?
Yeah, there was somebody from the Avs, and they didn't name any names from either team, but there was multiple players, employees, I think, from the Senators, and at least one from one other team. I'm sure you're right. It was Colorado.
We're talking about in terms of like the actual risk for the participants involved is very small from COVID-19 for younger people. I think we know that by now. I mean, everyone's there. They're certainly not in any identifiable high risk group of, older people, asthma, cigarette smoking, that kind of thing. They're not over the age of 60. So,
Except the coach.
except the coaches. Well,
Some of
yeah,
just
maybe the coaches have to be up in the up in the press box, can't be on the bench. I don't know. They'll have to figure that kind of thing out. But
Yeah.
I think this is the right idea. If it's going to happen, Bruce, it's going to happen this way, and it's a possibility. In the next couple of weeks, they'll know more about North Dakota and see how well that weathers this current storm. Once we get to the peak and start going down the other side, we'll see how North Dakota and other places like this are faring. And you could, if you start to plan for it now, you could see by May 1st or May 15th or something like that. Here we go. First round of 3 games, 3-game series for the first round, 5 games for the next round, and then we'll have 7 and 7 from then on in, or something like that. Or maybe they'll just go for the full lengthy playoffs, which would be fine. Do you know who the Oilers would play right now if it was based on winning percentage?
If it's based on percentage, I believe Vancouver was just a hair ahead of Calgary, was it, for third place? I haven't looked for a while for obvious
Here,
reasons, but
let's just
it
check.
was Vancouver that was just barely ahead on percentage.
All right, Bruce. Do you think this is going to happen? Yes or no?
I don't. I'm pessimistic.
Okay.
There are a lot of speed bumps and obstacles and curveballs that haven't been thrown yet. That I mean, a lot of things would have to fall into place, and they sure haven't been of late.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna go. I said before I was predicting 90% chance. I'm gonna go to 99% chance this is going to happen.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm
99.
saying there's a 99% chance this is gonna happen
Wow.
because I think we're gonna. I think they've come to the right idea. This is the right idea. It doesn't sound to me like it's impossible to quarantine both players, officials, everyone in a couple hotels, have them moving back and forth between the arenas and put on a TV show with everyone. And I think we're going to have enough tests and easy testing by the end of the month to that they're going to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm at 99%. Yes, this is going to happen.
Oh, well, you're an optimist.
I am.
That's great. We need optimism, but we need realism, and we need, well, a
We need
combination of
both.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the Oilers in the
So yeah,
standings.
Vancouver is 1-0-0-1 ahead of Calgary for third place in the Pacific.
No, by winning percentage.
By
I'm
points
looking at the wrong
percentage, yeah.
thing. Points
Yeah.
percentage, excuse me.
565 to 564. Calgary's played one more game and they have one more point. So, of course, that actually pulls them closer to
So the
500
Oilers
than
would play the Canucks, and
yeah.
Calgary would play who? Vegas?
Well, I guess that would depend if Calgary made it as a wild card team, David.
Yeah, let's have a look. I'm looking at the wrong thing
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
Maybe have to look.
unfortunately, yeah, I've got the stats, but they don't sort into East and West very well. We got St. Louis, Colorado, um, Dallas, um, Nashville. It looks like Calgary just squeezes in 0-0-1 ahead of Winnipeg Jets. Oh, brutal. Anyway, yeah, it's hard
You're a
to,
Jets fan.
yeah, brutal. Yeah, well, yeah, it's just a brutal way to decide it. It's more what I'm thinking.
Well,
So,
the Jets played one more game than Calgary, so they can't complain that they were shortchanged in that regard. Like Calgary played 70 games, the Jets 71.
yeah, 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 that's right. And Vancouver played 69, and they're all 9 points above Bettman 500. So the one with the fewer games played has an ever so slightly higher points percentage. So, you know,
Yeah, the key to having a game is obviously, you can't be getting on airplanes, going to hotels, traveling around, moving around. You've got to have a community where there's hardly any cases or no cases. You have to have hotels where you can quarantine both players and staff. and you need, and officials and everybody else. Like I'm saying, I'm guessing it's about 100 people you're going to need for one game of, between all the other people that have to be there. Maybe it's a little less than that, but I'm sure there's things I'm not thinking about. So I'm going to say
There's
100.
several dozens at minimum.
Yeah.
Talking about officials, you're talking about minor officials, you're talking about rink attendants, and then you're talking about the guys inside the team, the equipment manager, the trainer.
You know what,
You know.
Bruce? One other thought here. The league's just met with President Trump on this week, correct?
Yes.
I find it interesting that this is coming out right after that meeting. And out of that meeting, there was nothing. It just seemed very kind of boilerplate
Yep.
comments like Trump thanking the leagues for supporting and blah, blah, blah. But I bet you, if you're the president of the United States, I think you understand how important it is for some distraction right now, for people not to be so glum and depressed. And that's how this is shaping up to be, or maybe it's just the weather. Maybe it's just so sick of this weather, Bruce. I'm so
Oh,
sick of it. But maybe I think the isolation. And listen, when you're out there now in the streets, it's you go to this. It's horrible. Lining up for the store. Every person you bump into, you don't see as a human being. It's like someone who could give you a virus. Like
yeah.
this is not healthy. This is not good. And we're going to need some things other than just Netflix to pick up our spirits. And so I guess this is just different TV content, but it's pretty significant. Like it's human activity, it's life, it's something we're passionate about. So I could see the president saying, "Listen, have you thought about this?" Or maybe they proposed it to the president, and he said, "Hey, come up with the plan." And we'll do whatever we can. And this is of course total speculation here on my part. Come up with a plan and we'll take a look at it because he could see. Like any leader from Justin Trudeau to Donald Trump, and that's quite a gamut of ideology and different style of human being there, could see the benefit of this kind of thing. So, and I hope Saskatchewan gets in on it, or Manitoba, or some. It's not just North Dakota, but it's like that we get some small community in the interior of BC, or in Saskatchewan, or Red Deer, or someplace like that doesn't have very many, if any, cases, and they could make it happen there. That would be fantastic. Of course, they couldn't go. It would just be a
Maybe
TV show.
maybe Alaska, right?
Miracle, Alaska. Is the ice still frozen there on that lake?
Well,
Is that where
pretty good chance.
I've never watched
Frozen
that movie.
here.
Is it Mystery Alaska or
Mystery,
Miracle?
mystery, mystery, Alaska.
What
So
happened?
yeah,
What's that? Have you seen that movie?
years and years ago, and I've forgotten the gory details.
I can't remember. I don't think I've ever seen it. Yeah. All right. Works for me.
Well, yeah, I thought there's a lot of details, and the niggling thought that in the corner of my mind that just doesn't go away through all this is Joe Hull. And
What?
if there was a single Joe Hull out of the
Joe Hall.
Joe
Bad
Hull,
Joe Hall.
Joe Hull, the Joe Hull that died in 19 aftermath of the cancellation of the 1919 Stanley Cup Finals from Spanish flu. And it would just take one, David, and it would be catastrophic.
Bruce, this is a different from what
I
we
know.
know, and I think we know well enough. The Spanish flu took out young, healthy people. That's who was most, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am,
It
that's who
was
was
weird, yeah, very
most
different.
affected by the Spanish flu. This is completely opposite. This hammers the people at the other end of
Most,
the spectrum in terms of human health. Doesn't and so I don't see that comparison.
no,
Like I understand with our culture now, if someone gets like, I can see the threat of one player getting sick and what that would mean, especially if they were in quarantine and one guy got sick. But why not give it a go?
well,
And maybe you have protocols for if that happens. Like when you're in quarantine, hey buddy, all you players, guess what? Your rooms are gonna you're gonna be delivered your meal in your room. You're gonna have to stay in your room, and but the players will have to sign off on this. This will be
and
the
then
agreement. This
and
is
then
what
once a night you come out on the ice together and you sweat and you spit and you
they're
you do
wearing.
all the things that go on during a hockey game.
I don't think playing a
Uh,
hockey game would be particularly. Oh, maybe. if you're
I
sick, but I
yeah.
guess there's the asymptomatic. But Bruce,
Well, it's the
this has to come
asymptomatic
with testing,
cases.
right? They
Yeah.
would be
Well,
they'd have to be testing. Okay, they have a whole month. What if they're able to start? What if we get rampant testing within, let's say, 2 or 3 months?
that's a
So
huge
then
building
you're
block.
testing
Sure.
all these players in the weeks leading up. Everyone's negative weeks leading up. They get there. You're testing all the way through. I think you could have an expectation that that would not happen as long as no one breaks quarantine. So, and the players would understand the seriousness of that, and you could take extra precautions. Now they're going to have to go to the arenas and be together on the ice. But if everyone's being tested and no one's symptomatic, and they've been tested for some time, I don't see why this can't happen. Uh, it seems to me if there's a will, there's a way, and I'm guessing there's plenty of will here, and because I don't see this as particularly risky for the players, there's a lot of upside in going ahead. Have I
Well,
convinced you?
what's that?
I'm not really trying to convince you
No, no.
because
I'm just I'm taking kind of the opposite viewpoint, partly to
it's
make
good.
this interesting, but also partly because I am pessimistic right now at
Okay, why
how
are what's your
slow.
number one
Well,
reason for being
well, I mean, you
pessimistic?
keep hearing things like uh, places being um, uh, uh, shut down until June 30th, and dates well into the future, and hearing health authorities saying it's going to be 2 or 3 months before we might be on top of the curve, and it might only be the first curve. I mean, the Spanish flu came in 3 different waves, right? And it was anyway. There is um,
A
it,
lot of the media, Bruce, is concentrated in New York. New
mhm,
York's the hardest hit city
yep,
in America. North Dakota is not New York,
nope.
and maybe if the media capital of the world was Grand Forks, we'd be hearing a different attitude about this. Like, life can go on. I don't even know, is life going on in North Dakota? I don't even know if they're out of their schools yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have, it's a red state. It hasn't got any statewide lockdown. I believe some of the individual communities may well be, but there's not any sort of coordinated statewide thing. Um, a lot of the stats we've seen so far, it just shows that uh, wherever there may be delayed start, but once it starts in a certain place, the curve is going to do what the
Schools are
curve
closed in North
does.
Dakota. K to
So,
12 schools in North Dakota remain closed March 19th. Let me just see if there's anything. Yeah, closed until further notice, March 19th. So, so they are in lockdown there with their schools, and I imagine a lot of, like, I think it's really wise, right? Like, if you haven't had any problems yet, like, why not shut down right now? I think the luckier places are the ones kind of the last to get it because they can take the proper measures that probably should have been taken by everyone a couple months earlier.
yeah, you would think.
So anyway, we'll see. I remain extremely optimistic about this because for the reasons I've stated. So, what was your top reason against it again?
Well, just that it just seems to be getting so, the projections are getting so far out into the future before saying things will begin to normalize. And maybe some kind of whizzy solution like this for gathering all the players and so on in one place to do it, they can get ahead of the timeline a little bit, but I don't think they're going to be able to get ahead of it by a lot. So, I mean, and it has to be, I mean, the competition itself has to be conducted with integrity somehow. And if it winds up being a tournament instead of a, four best of seven series, it's always going to have an asterisk beside it, right? Whether it's worth it to have something with an asterisk or just have, a footnote in the standing saying this season was discontinued because of the coronavirus 2019 or 2020. Um, it's I'm of two minds about it for sure.
First, life finds a way, and so will hockey. All right, let's talk about what you're working on. You did a recent post. I did a recent post on the Bakersfield Condors, but we talked
Mm-hmm.
that one to death last podcast. But you've been
Yeah,
you've been in the midst of this Ken Holland series and the
yeah,
Oilers
yeah.
retrospective for the year, and you did a recent post on the kind of his plan for various players and how he carried that out. So what did you find?
It was really interesting. I found, well, first of all, to me, one of the things that really impressed me right off the bat was how he came to Edmonton, had a press conference on a Tuesday, and on the Wednesday, he was on a flight and watching a hockey game in San Diego, California, a long way from here, on Wednesday night. And I mean, some would call it due diligence, and I'm saying, fine, that's great. That's what you want in your manager. That right away, he took his opportunity to go down and see the prospects in his system. I think three different games. I think he saw game three, four, and five of that series, and he um, got a taste right away. And it was funny. He came into a situation where he had under contract eight forwards for next year, or no, this year, of course, and eight defensemen. So a very unbalanced. Like he had six NHL defensemen, plus he had Brandon Manning, whatever you want to call him. Plus he had Joel Pearson as a prospect who was locked up to a one-way NHL contract. Eight defensemen, and he only had eight forwards. So it looked like for the young guys there was a ton of room, opportunity at forward, and not no opportunity at all really on the back end. Well, that was the opposite of what he actually had in terms of prospects. He had three defensemen that were chomping at the bit, entering the last year of their entry level contract and needing a chance to show what they could do in the NHL and a chance to compete for an NHL job. That, of course, is Ethan Bear, Caleb Jones, William Lagesson. And arguably, they were the three most NHL ready prospects in the Oilers system last year. And yet there was this huge crowd of defensemen. So Holland went out last summer. Uh, First thing he did was, or one of the very early things he did was buy out Andrew Sekera and create that little bit of breathing room in the roster. Second thing he didn't do is he didn't sign a single defenseman. He just didn't sign any at all. He thought, well, we got these young guys. Among the three of them, one of them better be ready. We're going to be in trouble. But, we got to find out what we got. Because if you had another season going with the same starting six, then where are you, right? You're in the case where they were in 2017, where they lost Jordan Osterley walking away for nothing, right? Or, there's they needed to do something. So he broke that logjam. And at the forward position, he did the exact opposite. He created this huge logjam by going out and signing all these 26-year-olds. We've talked about this before at some length, but again, the guys Haas and Nygaard from Sweden, and from North America, Granlund, Sheehan, Archibald, Jurcho, even Patrick Russell, that he brought back as from unrestricted free agency, and all these guys, and he created these layers of competition among themselves, and against whom the young, very young guys, the Bensons, the Yamamotos, the Marodis of the world, would have to beat those guys out to get a job early in the season. And so they didn't. Of course, they all wound up going back down to Bakersfield, and it took Yamamoto till midseason to finally get his chance. And that was only after all of these guys, every single one of those guys I named got at least 10 games in the NHL, and all but Thomas Yurcho got over 30 playing for the Oilers this year. So Holland sort of put his money where his mouth is. Come to Edmonton, we'll give you a chance, and he gave him a chance. And finally, after Christmas, when the holiday roster freeze ended, that's when he shipped out Marcus Granlund, brought up Kyler Yamamoto, and that was sort of phase two, second half. Now we're gonna now we're gonna give one or two of these youngsters a shot. And they gave Tyler Benson one too, but he was a little less ready than Yamamoto. But so to me, he found a balance between giving the young guys a shot and not just sort of dumping them into a situation where they were in over their heads. And we've seen
Yeah,
that so many times in the last,
yeah. I
this,
love. Go ahead, Bruce.
sorry, just one last. This was only the second time in the entire decade, 2010 to 20, where the Oilers did not have a teenage rookie on the roster to open the season, just out of the previous draft.
Very
Second
sweet.
time in 10 years. And in fact, they didn't have a 20-year-old. Their youngest rookies at the beginning of the year were 22, and then they finally worked in the 21-year-old Kyler Yamamoto partway through.
I
So,
just I just want to emphasize what you're saying. I just loved how systematic it was to give Yurcho a chance, give
mhm,
Granlund a chance, give Patrick Russell a chance, and not only that, systematic in terms of giving people a chance on the top line with McDavid. I mean, give Nygaard that little chance, give Chase on a chance to play up in the lineup, give Cassian a chance, um, give Gagne a chance. And finally, when they had given all those guys a
give,
chance, they thought
give
we better
Pace a
give
chance.
we better give Yamamoto a chance, and it's about time, and they did. And then they still needed someone, so they thought let's give Benson a chance. Now Benson, I thought actually played very well. I think I was impressed, but he didn't impress the coaches as much as he impressed me. So they thought, okay, and they're come up to a playoff where they think we have a chance to win in these playoffs, win some games and win some series. So they bring in at that point the two veterans, and it was like clockwork in terms of its efficiency. It was very very well done, and it was so much more rational. Now maybe it was just by design that way, Bruce, or maybe because the Oilers are winning, you're allowed everything. When you win, everything starts to look in retrospect like, oh yeah, it all went according to plan, and the GM was so smart. But there did seem to be a plan in
Yes.
place, and the same. And you already talked about defense, so I won't go back over that. But I really did notice it at forward, and I loved how it played
Right.
out at
The
forward.
plan at forward versus defense were very different from each other. And I think because of the situation he inherited and just the developed state of the prospects. I mean, if you look at it, the three guys who did make the team as young players, Kyle Yamamoto is not officially a rookie, and the reason he's not is that he got two different cups of coffee in two different seasons, 9 and 17 games. Caleb Jones and Ethan Bear are both rookies, but each of them had about an 18-game trial in a previous season. So none of those guys was coming in blind. Whereas Tyler Benson, this was literally his NHL debut. So
Yeah,
he was getting the cup of coffee that those guys
yeah,
had before. Now, next year when he comes back, he'll have the benefit of that experience and hopefully a summer of normal training to build on, what he learned from the time he was in the league. I mean, those personal experiences the guys get of, how strong are these guys, how tough, how smart, how wily, how vicious, all those things that when you step up that extra level to the NHL, you find that all these degree of challenges. And I mean, it took Kailer Yamamoto a year and a half as a pro, and they had to fight through an injury. But and he was a first round draft pick. But even a successful pick, it can take him a while. And they're at least starting to deliver guys like that. And it seems like um, the Holland approach is, um, like you say, it's rational. And as far as I can tell, any sort of free agent that he signs, if he goes out next summer, just based on what he did here, and he would have had a huge long reputation with agents from everything he did in Detroit, but just based on what we saw here when we were looking at his, everyday thing close up. Uh, if I'm an agent, I love that guy. Like he says what he thinks. He offers your guy a chance. He gives him a chance, and even if he doesn't make it, you can't say, "Well, damn it, he never got a chance." You can say, "Well, he turned him over to the coach, and the coach liked another guy better, and eventually he didn't make the grade, right? Or he got hurt, or something happened." But even the guys that got sent out, they got called back up, except for Thomas Yurcho. All the other guys even got a second chance. The old person, even the guy who didn't work out on defense, he got chances, and
yeah.
then when they determined that he wasn't going to make the team, rather than burying him in Bakersfield, they traded him at the deadline to another team, because he's got a decision to make in the summer. Do I want to keep up with this North American dream or not? Well, this summer he's going to be able to make that decision based on a little more information that he got from the second organization when he got traded to the Anaheim organization. And to me, that's just the GM doing the player a solid and saying, well, we couldn't find room for you. We're going to give you a chance somewhere else.
Yeah. If the Oilers make the playoffs, Benson could be on the roster. So, or well, they would make the playoffs under this if there's no more regular season games. And I suspect there will not be.
Unless they go to an 8-team playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, I think they will. That's what they'll go to it. And maybe 24. You never know. Like they might increase it somehow. We'll see. But I could see, Benson being there with the team and the hotel quarantine, and maybe getting in some games. You never even know. But that'll be a good experience for him if that happens. He'll be practicing with the team every day and get to know these players really well, better. So that'll be good. I was just thinking one challenge. I think some players did go home to Sweden and stuff, but fortunately, various NHL owners own private jets, so can probably. And I think there are various.
Well, they got home
flights
somehow. There must be a way to get back.
Well, it was a little easier to travel at that moment in time than it is now, but they could figure that out as well. And like I say, Daryl Cates has a private jet that could just shoot on over and make a couple stops and get ready to play the Canucks. All right, Bruce.
In North Dakota, or is it no, Saskatoon?
Yeah, Saskatoon's it's a pretty big. I don't think Grand Forks as big as Saskatoon. Let's just Google this. I should have done a little bit more research before Grand Forks.
It's a very quite a deserted state, North Dakota.
That's not how they see it, Bruce. They see it as wide open. And
ever watch that movie Fargo?
Isn't that Minnesota?
That's Fargo, North Dakota. But the actual.
Jeez. Okay, guess how many people Grand Forks has, Bruce?
Carry on.
Can't be right. Let me just see if I got.
Number.
Let me just see if I have the right state here. Is there another? Okay, population.
College town, eh?
Okay, guess. Don't Google.
Small.
Oh, it's bigger. Okay. Grand Forks has 57,000.
I was going to guess 60. Damn it, I should have said it.
60,000.
Oh, that's a good guess.
Bismarck, 72,000. And is it Minot? 47,000.
What's Fargo?
And Fargo, North Dakota. I thought Fargo was in Minnesota. Maybe it's because she had a Minnesota. Oh, wasn't the lead actress from Minnesota. She had a Minnesota act.
But the original crime happened in Fargo.
Fargo is bloody huge, man. It's 122,000 people.
Wow,
and Sioux Falls, 176,000 people. Where's Sioux Falls? Is that Dakota too?
Well, anyway, there's a bunch of Red Deers and Lethbridges and St. Alberts and Sherwood Parks there, as opposed to Edmontons and Calgarys.
Made to order for the NHL playoffs 2020. Here we go. All right.
All I can do is remember that scene from the movie where they've got the cash and guy's trying to bury it along the snow fence, and he looks up and down the fence for like 100 miles in each direction. And there's absolutely nothing to be seen in either direction. And he buries the money by a fence, and he sticks his windshield scraper into the ground as a marker as to where he can find the money later.
I remember a couple scenes from that movie, but I don't think I'll repeat them during this podcast.
Coen brothers had a pretty bizarre sense of humor.
That was a great movie. All right, Bruce. Well, let's leave it there, and right. You'll be posting on this.
I'll have a post up on this. I'm not quite sure how far to take it, but we'll. The
Saskatchewan solution.
We'll talk about it.
The Saskatchewan solution. It's coming.
I do have a little bit more to come yet on Ken Holland. I'm digging into his trading record, and that's going back in time to what he did in Detroit. And it's kind of interesting to see some of the patterns that emerge from that.
Well, I feel a new burst of energy on this, and I'm going to be digging into the Oilers' penalty kill like I did the power play previously. The penalty kill and best practices for the coming playoffs, for the coming 2020 playoffs. All right, Bruce.
I look forward to that. Your penalty or your power play series was excellent.
Yeah, thank you. And I found it really interesting. I didn't
Hmm.
know what I was going to find, and I just found it fascinating. So I know a lot more
That's
about
the
the
best
power play
kind
than
when you don't know what you're going to get and you find something solid.
yeah.
That's the best kind of research.
All righty. Thanks for talking.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.